All right. It is hard to believe, but 9 years have passed since the Fukushima Daiichi triple meltdown and nuclear calamity occurred in Japan. Those 9 years have not brought us any relief, any diminution, any lessening of the radiation that is coming over to North America and on to Europe and around the entire Northern Hemisphere. In fact, it probably has increased, not only in volume, but recently TEPCO said that they were going to dump all of those evil, stupid fuel tanks into the Pacific Ocean, which they're going to do. They first had a plan of boiling it all off and sending it up into the atmosphere. How smart is that? It's beyond astounding to consider the stupidity of the Japanese government, the evil intent with how they have managed the situation, which is essentially, I should cut them a little slack. It is essentially unmanageable. There's nothing that can be done to resolve the issue at Fukushima Daiichi. We began covering this on 3/11, and we covered it every week for years. And with me on this program for years was one of the world's truly great environmentalists, researchers, writers, just an extraordinary human being, Yoichi Shimatsu. Among other things, he was the editor of the Japan Times Weekend Edition. He has been a friend of mine, off air, on air, and yours as well for all these years. We want to mention also Dana Durnford, who paid a terrible personal price for coming forward with the truth in Canada. We wish Dana was with us tonight, but he has shifted gears and is concentrating on the virus now to basically stay away from the gun sights of the Canadian government. And we wish Dana the best and thank him for his remarkably brave contributions to not only this program, but to the world. But standing by right now, and we're going to go through some of this, is Yoshi, who is here in the States right now. And I think he would be, if anybody on the planet, the one to go to talk about the increase and continually increasing radioactive nuclide elements that are in our soil, our plants, our trees, our water, our atmosphere, and they are only increasing every day, 24 hours a day. No reduction. And it's going to continue this way for a long, long time. The half-lives of some of the radioactive nuclides are in the 50,000-year range. There is a cemetery east of the Tri-Cities in Washington State, Richland, Pasco, and Kennewick, near the Hanford Nuclear, they call it a reservation. It's a death pit. There's a cemetery east of that, and it is, I am told, reserved for little babies who are born with no brain in their cerebral cranium. Nothing. That's one tiny aspect of the terrible damage that Fukushima has done and continues to do. Yoshi, thanks for being here tonight. 9 years ago, and you started, I think, 2 weeks after this catastrophe on this program, something like that. We followed the whole damn thing all the way.
Yeah, I recall how we got going. We did our best to cover it, and then when I took trips to Japan, I'd rent a phone just to talk to your show, but we were always intercepted. I don't know how many times. We had shows scheduled, and the call would not go. There was total government control. They were sabotaging my equipment. They were, harassing people. So many people were silenced. There's still more than 2,000 people missing. There was a lot. There was sort of a dirty war going on behalf of the nuclear industry there, and many of the people I knew there, they were dead within about 3 to 4 years. I go back to their houses after spending a couple days with them, on a couple of years in a row. Then the house, I go up there, there's nobody there. I knock on the window, on the door on the side. It looks desolate. Ask the neighbors what happened. They say they don't know. It's something more than just an industrial accident. There was a lot of intrigue, government intrigue, a lot of foul play. And right now you said, well, you think they're going to dump. Well, they announced, I think, last year that they're going to dump well ahead of the Olympics. So the Olympics are scheduled for, late July, August? So I assume they have already started emptying the wastewater tanks in the ocean. So we're excuse me, but you and I both know, and we've mentioned this, they've been sneakily dumping that stuff for years. Oh, absolutely. But this one will be a massive dump to clear out all the tanks. And so we would expect some really devastating impacts in, let's say Hawaii, the Seattle area, Puget Sound, the Canadian coast, all the way down as the California current goes down, to Southern California, and as the current, passes closer to Central America there too. Whatever's left that's still alive, and we know the fish populations, the tide pool populations, the bird populations, the insect have been just wiped along the coast. And the other problem is we also know those firestorms of 2017, when you had more than 2,000 lightning strikes a day in a single county in California or Washington State. That's radioactivity, folks. That's like massive amounts of radioactivity on the foliage, and the forest goes up, and all the stuff comes into, the smoke comes into everyone's houses that isn't burned, and they get to breathe it for weeks. So that was like a second really massive dose that people in California have suffered.
People didn't understand.
They don't understand.
No. Look, within 2 months or 3 months, UC Berkeley was doing wonderful reports on the amount of radiation, radioactivity detected in the topsoil, the water, the agricultural crops, the trees, the bushes, the shrubs, you name it, the air. They were doing great reports. Every single monthly report, the graph kept going up and up and up in every category. And after about 8 or 9 months or less, they were shut down. Yeah. But what they did and what they said was, after, I think it was the second or third report, and I caught this, there was a little note that they had in pine tree needles all up and down the West Coast, from Washington all the way down to California and the Sierras, found radiation in the pine needles of the trees. Now, what that said was the radiation went into the ground, the water from the rain pushed it down, the plants took it up, put it up into their greenery, all the rest of it, and when they burned, they released that radiation into the air again. You're right on the money.
Yeah, and that big Sonoma fire was obviously, I recognized, the power of tritium, that somehow, as though it's heavier than water, it floats on top of water, and that was that flaming, that vast fire that was hitting the wine country in Sonoma and Napa. So the danger's not over. It's not like things are diminishing. It's coming over in waves. And in a few months, when the Tokyo Olympics start to, end, we will see the West Coast being hit again. And we know atmospherically, the stuff really travels fast in the atmosphere. Evaporates, gets into that jet stream and comes right over. It goes as far, into the Arctic, hits the Rocky Mountains, goes all the way down the Rocky Mountains to New Mexico and Mexico. So it has
back
a devastating impact.
You remember? It swings back up north and then heads out east over the Atlantic, all over Europe. They were finding, let me think, cesium, I forget which one of the cesium twins, in the dairy milk of Vermont cattle 3 weeks after Fukushima. That's how quickly it came over, went into the ground and up into the grass and was eaten by the cattle. Think about that.
Yeah. And Yeah, that's it. There were warnings not to give your children, fresh cow's milk and things like that. So that was, it was very intense. But the thing is, we've got conditioned to it. We're getting really conditioned to autism in children, and radioactivity.
And Alzheimer's in adults.
Yeah, in adults. You can trace all that back to Chernobyl. And so we're going to see many more waves of this stuff, in children in North America and Northern Europe, so Korea, places like that. So this is, and I think the newest thing we're finding out, and as I wrote in a recent article for you, is a correlation between countries that have been hit by high radioactivity due to various accidents, and also Fukushima, the Italian nuclear shutdown, was very, very messy. The mafia dumped fuel rods into landfills, into the Mediterranean. So Italy was very much, they wanted to go non-nuclear, but the corrupt government gave the contract to the mafia, and they were just dumping recklessly. So we see, that enormously high rate of coronavirus in older people in Italy. There is a correlation. These people, their immune systems have been damaged by the post-Chernobyl decommissioning, the dumping by the mafia. We see high rates in Japan, Fukushima, high rates, of course, in Wuhan. That's, China's crisscrossed by not only the Chinese and Soviet nuclear tests, the jet stream brings all of that radioactivity across, but there was a massive radioactive event. I was there on Chinese TV, and I had a two-man team from my environmental committee working in Sichuan. They saw the first collapsed mountain, and then I flew over the Beichuan Valley with a little James Bond type made in Russia watch that took dosimeter reading and found 4 hotspots, 4 mountains that collapsed. These were nuclear bomb warhead facilities built on the French model. If you recall that in the 1960s and 70s, Charles de Gaulle wanted to create a third force. So what he did, he built, there was the Soviet Union, there was the United States. He wanted to have France and China allied to make a three-way thing. So no, the superpowers would not try to start a nuclear war. So these underground reactor cities were built in this one valley in Sichuan, and the earthquake basically destabilized that. And so that hit the Beijing Olympics, so the Olympics have already been radioactive. Much of the Chinese leadership from that time, you don't see much of them because they've been terribly irradiated. And so, and then after the Olympics, I did some measurements. Some of the Chinese kids asked me, what do you do with that, detector you have? I said, do you mind showing us? I just turned it on, put it on the ground. They said, what's the safe line? What's it? 0.11. And they said, oh my God, it's 0.18, And I said, well, that's not too high really nowadays. But yeah, you did get hit. After, during right before the 2008 Olympics, it came over, and I did consult with the science and tech minister. I had a friend who worked there who asked me, hey, what can we do about it? I said, well, during one of my environmental conferences, I was in the Altai Mountains, where Stalin had, occupied a lot of Chinese land in the Uyghur area and, Altai Mountains in Xinjiang. And he had done uranium mining for the Soviet bomb, okay? But he was reckless. He just left the trash. So I worked with a Kazakh environmental science who was using plants, phytoremediation, to prevent contamination of rivers, because all these kids were dying in Kazakhstan. Thousands of children, were malformed and all that. So Dr. Sarzanbayev, he was planting all these trees. So we worked together for a few days, and we visited a mine there in the Altai Mountains in Bergen, a town called Bergen, where they were digging out boron and also some other minerals, which I couldn't catch because I didn't know that, it's very technical in Chinese, a mixture of minerals with which they were covering up all the former Soviet nuclear sites. So I told this guy at the science ministry, get that stuff from Xinjiang that they're using in Bergen, at those mines, and dump it on those mountains. And they did. I think they did, because the levels then went down very unnaturally, right? And suddenly there was a drop. So the Beijing Olympics was essentially saved. Otherwise, we have a situation like the Tokyo Olympics. If they happen, they're talking about delaying it now for a year, but still, it's going to be bad in a year. It's not going to be good for the next, 50, 100 years. So it's very, very bad what radioactivity can do to young adults, because it means for the rest of their life, their immune system is going to be down, and it's going to shorten their life. And anything like a coronavirus, which is killing all these people who are older, is not because they're old. It's because their immune systems have been shot. And you look at every country which has high rates, okay? The UK, Germany. Germany had those East German reactors, Chernobyl, right? And overflows from Russia. All of those countries are having high coronavirus death rates among people who are older because their immune systems were shot a long time ago. So this is a real long-term problem. Don't think it goes away. When you grow up and you're about to retire and you end up in a terminal ward of a hospital, that's no fun. You worked all your life and you don't get to enjoy, a cruise ship because you're going to get coronavirus on this cruise ship, but you're also going to die because you don't have an immune system left, thanks to Fukushima.
How many Japan high school students have died of heart attacks? How many times have we seen stories about that? They're all hushed up now.
The sudden death, that's a sudden death where nothing's really detected, and they just drop in the schoolyard going home. And then that Rikako Iki, a champion teenage swimmer, she came down with leukemia, very, very harsh case of leukemia, had to drop out of the Olympic team. So it's really criminal how Shinzo Abe is wanting to push this Olympic when his young athletes are in trouble. And, I don't know what the death toll is because the Japan Sports Federation isn't telling us how many coaches are dying and all that. And I'm sure coronavirus is going to take its toll because these people, they're out exercising right now. They're outdoors doing calisthenics and all that. They're really exposing themselves. So I hope they're not crazy enough. I think the Olympics, International Olympics Committee wants to delay this. They just realize this is, the publicity. If people in the grandstand start keeling over and things like that, the repercussions.
Let me suggest this. Not only are you right about that, but fold in the coronavirus, which I'm going to send you a video. It's going up in the headline, so I'm going to send this to you, and I'm going to urge you to watch it. It's an hour long. It's a Stefan Molyneux interview, but it's a conversation with a doctor. And he lays it all out, and he's 100% right. This bioengineered virus was designed to destroy life as we have lived it. Usher in the New World Order, and I mean it's going to be incredibly destructive to political systems, cultural systems, social systems, financial systems. The banks in America are going to fail, many of them. It can't keep printing this worthless, useless money and bailing out things that are dying, and they're dying. We're going to digital currency. We're going to online voting. It can't count on it. We're going to social credit scoring. We're going to extremely harsh socialism. And if you don't get your vaccine, guess what? You won't be able to get your digital currency. They'll just shut it off until you get your vaccine. This is a massive change, a planetary-wide change, but most especially in the first world. They, the 1%, are changing the way things are. That's what's going on. And now with the radiation weakening people so much over the last 9 years, this coronavirus is going to have a field day, especially with our older people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the weakening is also psychological, mental, as we saw in the children's brain suffering, newborns' brain suffering. It's not like adult brains are not hurting. People are becoming couch potatoes, so it's really bad. It's really bad. Absolutely
correct, 100% correct. And I don't even like, and neither does Yoshi, we don't like bringing this information out, but it's reality. It's what we're faced with. And if you know what's coming, you'll have a chance to prepare. And going out and buying 3 or 4 weeks worth of food is just not going to do it. All right? You got to think about these things. Back in a minute. Hold on. All right, welcome back. Talking with Yoshi about 9 years of being pummeled with radiation that is never talked about in the news, the so-called news, I should say the mass social programming engine that the 6 corporations that own it all use against us 24/7. That's what it is. It's social programming. And there'll be social credit. You watch, social credit's coming. You don't get your vaccine, you don't get your money. It's the way it's going to be brutal socialism. That's what's going to be used as the tool to implement all this. So just watch and prepare. And if you've got any way of buying more than a month's worth of food, please do it. All right, Yoshi, go ahead.
Well, just as we're talking, in a couple hours, the Olympic torch is going to arrive from, Greece, Athens, to Tokyo. A devastated Tokyo where everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone's living in fear, this nonstop fear. They've had this, we had the Tokyo subway gas and Kobe quake, the subway gassing, fear of another giant of a quake in Tokyo. And this coronavirus, manufactured by that lunatic Japanese microbiologist, or created by him, manufactured elsewhere. But and amidst all this, people dying, everyone afraid of getting sick, afraid of being on trains, and it's mainly a train system. Everyone tried to drive to Tokyo, it would take you a week to get in there. And so this Olympic torch arriving when, more and more people, all the events are being canceled and all that. And the government is saying, we are definitely going to do this Olympics. It's, you can understand, the end of World War. Huh? Well, yeah, you can understand, the battleship Yamato, the Japanese fleet being destroyed at the Battle of the Gulf of Leyte. People being flame thrown to death. This sort of stubborn refusal to recognize reality. This is a really terrible Japanese characteristic, and that really defines what happened in Fukushima. Remember I took so many herbals down there, I cured people, and I told them, you really have to leave here, whatever you do. Yep. They said, no, this is our home. We have to stay. And now you really have to stop growing things in your garden. You really have to stop fishing because all these burns on your skin and this bad pain in your gut is all coming from it. But we have nothing else. This is what we do. It's a stubborn refusal to come to grips with a changing reality by brutal forces that are out of our control, but we have to do something, right? And this is my point. Maybe you can't stop them. Maybe the bulldozer's too, hard to stop, and you end up like that Irish girl got run over in Israel. But you've got to do something. You've got to do something to resist what is happening, to get around it, and to keep up struggling for humanity, for yourself, for your family, for your friends. You've got to keep going. And I think that was a lesson from Fukushima. And I did send you some articles that showed, people protesting in Tokyo. There are still people who are going to protest, who are fighting the Olympics, who link it to Fukushima. So, without those few people doing that, it would really totally be a lost cause. And I think that's a lesson for America. There should be a lot more people doing that. And there should be a lot more people asking questions about radioactivity on the West Coast. Why Puget Sound is... Puget Sound was heavily hit, right?
Puget Sound is so toxic that the orca colony pod that lives there has had, at last that I've looked, one live birth in the last 5 years. That's it.
Yeah, they're finished.
They're going extinct. They're done.
Yeah. So that was a real casualty. And guess what? Coronavirus arrives. And that same area, Bill Gates' country, right up there, gone. Yeah. He's up there, I think, in the San Juan Islands or somewhere like that. I forget the name where he lives. But there's all these rumors about him buying a a gigantic yacht, right? Which is a floating city that's sort of like Greta Thunberg yacht, environmentally correct yacht.
Yes.
Bill Gates,
politically
environmentally correct
yacht. Right. Environmentally correct all the way. That's right.
Yeah, so this is even he, I think, is evacuated, and of course Amazon's been kicking around for a new site. Can you blame them? Yeah, I think these corporate bosses won't tell you the real reason that Amazon's got to leave Seattle too. So this is.
Yeah, they were going to go in New York for their new headquarters, until
AOC killed them off there.
Killed that.
Yeah.
Maybe
she did a favor by pinning Jeff Bezos down in Seattle. Maybe he'll be stuck there, unlike Bill Gates, who had the sense to leave. So it's nearly a comedy. What's going on among the elites trying to escape this monster that they created. Okay, and
exactly.
But Seattle being an epicenter is really terrible. And then we have the Hanford flow down the river, the Columbia River. So, that whole coastline there, so horrible, and down Diablo Canyon area, we've had all these problems, and, so the problem we're seeing is that we've hit the end of the nuclear curve, and no one knows what to do. We can't decommission the plant. There's been so much opposition in, Nevada to Yucca Mountain storage, right? I think the Trump EPA tried to sneak in some materials to store there out of some of the old nuclear plants, and then Nevada caught them and is raising a ruckus.
I didn't hear that. That's pretty funny. I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So Trump had to reverse that and pull back. So the president is powerless against Las Vegas casino operators who now are broke because there's coronavirus. Everyone is afraid to go to Vegas again. And who in their right mind? Remember the other story you and I worked on was a Las Vegas shooting? Who in their right mind wants to go back to a mass shooting site like this? Massive guerrilla operation by jihadists. In the middle of the desert, not the Arabian desert, but the Intermountain desert. That's incredible things have happened, and it seems people are immune to the idea of, safety, proper living, getting things done.
It's the death of common sense, Yoshi. It's just not there. We don't have the ability any longer to defend territory. There's been, I believe, something done with EMF, electromagnetic frequencies from satellite, from ground stations, whatever. People no longer have the ability or the desire to defend their territory, their homes, their families. Not like they used to. Not like it's different.
So this is a very terrible, terrible thing, because the real border is really creeped up, hundreds of miles of north from where it used to be, and that's I don't say that as racism, because a lot of the people who come in are white people, and Asians, right, in Mexico, in Latin America, and, Brazil, places like that, or Puerto Rico. So I don't mean to be racist, I'm just saying there's a gigantic cultural shift towards Spanish, toward a different value system, which has I've done a lot of thinking about a value that has a lot of tolerance for theft, against people who are perceived to be a little bit better off than you are. Because, I got to feed my kids. And the priest in the confession book says, well, you had to feed your kids. Okay, I let you off. This is a new climate that is really hampering a national consensus. We could not build really a California consensus, a West Coast consensus against Fukushima. That was really terrible. I remember I would talk to you about my research on the tide pools there, and people would walk by and I'd say, everything's dead. And they would just say, I know, and then keep walking by. In other words, they don't even want to look at the tide pool, right? Do you understand? They're not going to get angry. They're not going to protest. They're not going to write friends and say, everything is dead out here. They're just going to take a stroll along there. And it's kind of nihilism, This is what's really crept in. People are willing to die. And basically, they want to die painlessly. It's not about having a challenging life. It's about having a painless death. That's their goal. So we're
I
really.
think you just said something that's profoundly interesting and true. They just want to be allowed to fade away without a lot of pain. They just want to just go away. The American character has been assassinated in so many cases. Not everyone, but the great majority of people have been lulled into this screen addiction of fairyland. It's not the real world. Sports.
Well,
and now all of a sudden, wait, one other thing. Watch what happens. No Major League Baseball, no NBA, football probably isn't going to happen either. And you're going to see now people who are going through, and I'm talking about by the tens of millions, a drug withdrawal syndrome from no longer having sports to watch and vicariously live their lives through. It's not going to happen. PTSD, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, because I notice over here a lot of people watch these dystopian shows. People who are being locked up, imprisoned, abused, survivors struggling. You cannot win anymore. All you can do is try to live another few hours, another day, get by as the people around you drop. And this is a sickness. And this is a mental sickness from the radioactivity I was talking about, this depression. I noticed a lot of depression among younger people in Japan who are
We talked about this years ago, 7, 8 years ago. We started to notice. We started to observe. We said that this is psychologically having an impact on people. Yeah, I remember it.
They're just dragging along, and then they get treated, in hospitals with antidepressants, which are actually depressants. I mean, and so they just get buried under, and they cannot handle a joke. There's no sense of humor. You joke with one of them, and they just walk away and feel like the world's against them, when actually you're trying to cheer them up. Victim mentality.
Victimhood.
You're just trying to tell them, you're taking it too hard. That's what you're in a joke. You're taking it too hard. Let's joke about it, But they feel victimhood. So, this isn't just psychological or social. That's there too, all this political correctness. But it's also in the air and the water, and we've got to do something to it. But the problem is, my problem now is after China, I had to get out of there, obviously, because there's total censorship. Our 40-minute videos or 20-minute videos, they're ordering us to load them on TikTok, which is 20 seconds, So we're competing against juggling dogs or something like that, right? With serious material for 20 seconds. How can we get a message across? So therefore, I was forced out, but just in time. Otherwise, I'd be stuck there.
I remember talking to you. When did you leave there? Was it October?
September? Right.
October?
Yeah, October,
You got out just in time. I mean,
just
literally
in the nick
just
of time,
in time.
Right? Just as those military gains were about to start and get hit by the coronavirus, which we'll discuss about another time. But I'm writing you more about that. We've identified pretty clearly now the culprits. Finally, the Russians are saying that it all started in Britain, at Porton Down, and this Purbright, which is an interesting topic up here. Purebright. It's called Purbright in British. It's Purebright in English and in American. But it was named after Lord Purbright, and his actual name was Henry Rothschild de Worms, banker, who was a financier. This is amazing. Along with Henry Wellcome, the founder of the pharmaceutical company, and Cecil Rhodes, who basically wanted a second chapter of the Boer War. The Dutch down there in Africa weren't punished enough. So they had the second chapter. They put 26,000, white women and children in the concentration camps, unleashed typhoid on them. There was rinderpest against their animals, okay? That was the basis for the formation of Porton Down, was rinderpest. Then they unleashed typhoid, and they did vaccine experiments on all these Dutch, French, and German kids in the concentration camp. 26,000 of them lost their lives. And also with blacks, there were like 3,000 blacks in other internment camps who died off because of these vaccine experiments. So we're finding out from this current, only from this current outbreak, we're finding out, oh my gosh, the history goes back to the atrocities, the human rights violations of the Second Boer War by these people we know are bad people. Yeah, I mean, they've done so many horrible things around the world, exploiters, So this is the challenge. We're getting hit from east and west. We're getting hit from every side. This is the problem. Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know what the masses are going to do. They don't have their screens anymore. There's big sports screens going. Yeah. And we're talking 100 million Americans minimum who are addicted to that. And now it's taken away from them. And this is not going to blow over soon. This could last for 16, 18 months. We don't know. There'll be a second wave coming in this fall. All these pandemics have waves. It's not just a one-off deal.
It's a good point you raised because I'm half Japanese American and half Japanese, and my father was more American than I was. He went to fight in Europe with American uniforms and really fight some really ghastly. 442nd. He was a really tough guy and lasted the whole war. One of the longest serving American soldiers in the Army. But I'm a little different because I was born in Japan. But you wonder what's going to happen. I'll tell you what's going to happen. Something like the concentration camps, the relocation centers for the Japanese. First, they're going to put the sick people away. Then, they'll send their families in there.
Then they'll put the politically sick away. They're going to retrain them. Re-education camps. Watch.
Yeah, and then there'll be really concentration camps where harvesting camps. Like that hotel in Fujian province that collapsed.
Oh, yes.
Remember that? The week before they reported there were 2 cases in Fujian, 2 infections. Then the building collapsed, and then 70 people die or something like that, 7-story new building. And I'm figuring out what happened. See, what they did in Wuhan, they had to use all kinds of antibiotics to just prevent the rest of the city from dying. But you isolate them in a little town in Fujian, you can get people who haven't been given a lot of drugs, right, in these isolation chambers. That way, they build up serum in their bloods, right? You understand?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Serum in the bloods. Then when D-Day comes, you turn on the gas in the building and shut off the electrical power. You understand? Then you can drain their blood, and the serum will be reserved for all the elite people, the rich people, people who have the money to pay. Do you understand? To get the antibodies. Now, what destroyed that building? I figured it out. They had the power off. They were looking for mobile phones. Maybe someone of the patient must have stuck a mobile phone under his pillow or under, his mattress. Someone called, and the building exploded, So do you understand what I'm saying here? Harvesting centers, okay? Harvesting centers.
How many organs did they get from that one?
Well, they get them from nearly every major hospital, but they want healthy people who are not on drugs to, don't have all these HIVs and things. They want these healthier people.
Oh, they got
so if you're a healthy person, you're going to a camp for healthy people. Right. I say, watch out, folks. Watch out. You're going to a sports camp because you're so healthy and young. Watch out. Watch out. That's what happened in Fujian. That sets the pace. That's the model. That's why no one's talking about it. The news poll that Bloomberg doesn't talk about it.
Gone.
No one's, the mainstream New York Times, no one's talking about it, okay? Because they see here the new business model, harvesting human blood and organs and serums and everything else, okay? So this is the end game. So that's why, in a certain sense, people in California, the West Coast, won't be used. They're too radioactive, right? You understand? They've got too many problems. So they'll be rounding up people from Kansas, Arkansas, these states where there's only like 1 or 2 coronavirus problems, they're in the Oklahoma and all that. Those are the people who are going to the health camps to be harvested. So just wait and see. You'll see what I mean. When some disease comes through, there'll be all these cohort groups. Oh, give this guy typhoid. Give this one typhus. Give this one HIV. And, and that's unfortunately the direction that the Gates Foundation, the Purbright Foundation, all of these, population control groups and, are doing. And Wellcome runs a thing called the Wellcome Sanger Institute. Like Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger, yeah.
Yeah, the British
Planned
Wellcome
Parenthood.
Group. Yeah, controls the Sanger Research Institute. They own it. It's in England, and there's, I think, a branch in the U.S. now, which is, of course, better about abortions and using embryonic tissue. The Sanger Institute is set up to do genetic studies. What we're talking about here is embryonic tissue, So this is really a kind of medical cannibalism, Let's get that very clear. It's a kind of cannibalism. Some people can live longer by other people living shorter. It's not much really different than the Aztec priests cutting out some people's hearts and having them for dinner. It's really not that much different. A human heart is probably good for your
people
blood and immune system if you live in a poor society on a corn diet. So
that's
they felt a lot better and stronger.
Just people don't understand. It was written about once, and the liberals went berserk, and the story was pulled, and it had to do with the protein deficit that the Aztec culture was faced with, confronted with. Where did they get the protein that they were missing? From all those sacrifices.
Harvesting humans. And this is part of that, what I mean by this tradition, why I'm worried about the border going north. You know about all the medical horrible things that go down south of that border, right? Yeah. Well, the border is not along the U.S., Mexican border anymore. It's 150 miles inland or 200 miles inland in place, 300 in some places. So this is very worrisome because this value system, which doesn't respect human life, doesn't respect the individuals, doesn't respect the sanctity of every person's body and mind and soul or whatever. No. That kind of value system is, unfortunately, of aggression. It's basically of aggression. That we, people who are defenseless should be consumed and, it should be used.
They look upon us as we are cattle in a feedlot.
Exactly. And we know other groups that look at that, the same way, right? So this is very, very problematic of why community must not break down. I mean, maybe there was a lot of overreaction. Maybe there was a lot of racism too. But a community has to live by its values. And the United States has failed against Japan, with this nuclear disaster at Fukushima. That was Obama. He basically failed at everything. He gave it away to ISIS and everything else. It was a fire sale. American assets were on fire sale under Obama. But unfortunately, the current administration sort of picked, Trump as a candidate picked up on that idea, but has dropped the ball. We're all talking about, we have a shortage of supply. Why do we have a shortage of supply? Because nobody invested in basic industry in the last 3.5 years as promised, So this is the problem of the value system.
3.5
people
years,
talk about.
How many industries have been brought back to America?
Nothing.
I can't name one.
No, I went to Vietnam, and guess where there's a big coronavirus outbreak now? Vietnam, right?
So, we don't even make masks for our doctors and health staff.
How hard is that? Come on, how hard is that? You can have machines and a lot of robots and all that to it. Nothing has been done. And this is why this next election must be conditional. We want things done before the election gets started, and we want to see it all the way through. The next 4 years. This is, it's time to reindustrialize America, get the border straightened out, and get value systems back into the school agenda, back into communities and all that, in towns and so on. We need to reassert all that because this age of cannibalism is coming. It's here. It's not coming. It's here already.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, my friend. That you just laid it out. Couldn't be any better.
we'll
forget
see
the
about
Olympics,
this Tokyo.
people.
We'll see about this Olympics. We'll keep track of it, even if it's delayed, because we're not going to give
Olympics.
Oh my, face mask. That's great. Yeah, running the marathon with a gas mask on your face. Try that. Yeah, ridiculous. Come on. These people are just. This shows how crazy they are, how greedy they are, how ruthless they are. And people should not tolerate any kind of governance or social authority that basically are a bunch of cannibals. I refuse that. We're not on the planet of the apes. We will defend democracy.
Cannibals.
Huh?
Ruthless cannibals. Ruthless cannibals.
Yes.
That's exactly right. All right, Yoshi. Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Great job.
thanks a lot for the call. Bye-bye.
You bet. Yoichi Shimatsu, one of the truly great people I've ever known. Okay, we'll be right back with hour number 2. Lots ahead.